I would like to call to order the December 3rd St. Tammany Parish Government Board of Adjustments meeting. We thank you for being here today. Hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving. And you have first would ask Ms. Helen to read the roll call.
Mrs. Thomas?
Present.
Mr. Daly?
Here.
Mr. Blosh?
Here.
Mr. Glockner?
Here.
Mr. Swindell?
Here.
Mr. Sanders? Mr. Horn? Madam Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Just a moment, we're trying to adjust none of the screen work?
Okay.
Voting console. Now,
Did you get it?
Oh, maybe it was a loose wire.
it's that, no screen. Oh, come back.
Are you on?
Yeah, I'll put the screen, but yeah.
Okay.
Try to see if you can, Mr. Daly, it's working?
It's working, yeah.
Oh.
Thanks.
Is your screen working?
Oh, my side one is, but my big one is.
The voting one is.
Voting, neither.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Excuses technical difficulties for a moment.
Okay. The voting, you can't vote either? No, I think it's on. None of these are.
Okay.
You're welcome to sing some Christmas carols if you like.
Those do not route to our feed. I don't believe hits would be one of these. That's what controls that.
No, but they're saying that they're
Voting machine, the voting.
Brian, you're Mr. Swindell.
Let's see.
That's where I was.
Okay.
It is working? Okay.
Okay,
All righty.
good, thank you.
Thank you for that brief delay. I would like to do some housekeeping. I will please ask you to silence all of your phones prior to the meeting. If you disagree with the decisions that the Board of Adjustments makes today, you are free to appeal it to the 22nd Judiciary District Court. We have speaker cards on either side. If you are here to oppose or have something to say and are not directly involved in the case, you're welcome to put your speaker card there. Public speaking. We have 5 minutes on each side and 3 minutes for additional comments for rebuttal. And then as soon as your case has been voted upon, we would ask you to please leave, not because we want you to go, but because talking can be distracting when we're trying to pay attention to the other person's, the next few. So that's why we ask you to do that. All right, I would ask now, have the members of the board received the minutes from last night? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes and or any changes? Mr. Bosch moves. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a move and a second to accept the minutes from last month.
Please vote.
Please vote with your screen.
Go ahead.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, are we good?
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, thank you. All right, we will start with BOA case number 2024, and it is 3998. Okay, so the request by the applicant is to appeal a decision made by a parish official for the denial of permit number 2024-4390 in regards to the required enclosure for a swimming pool by a permanent and solidly constructed fence or wall of not less than 4 feet in height. This is a PUD overlay. I would ask for Ms. Helen to read the findings.
The applicant submitted an application for a building permit to construct an in-ground swimming pool, which is proposed to be located 70 feet from the rear property line, 77 feet from the eastern property line, and 90 feet from the western property line. The request for the swimming pool was denied as per section 400-8 NN, as the plot plan did not show the required fencing around the perimeter of the pool. The applicant is appealing the decision made by the Director of the Department of Planning and Development to deny the building permit with the justification that the fencing would not be required due to the proposed pool cover. Staff recommends upholding the decision of the planning director, considering that while a pool cover may act as a barrier over the water surface, which could prevent accidental fall and reduce evaporation, a fence creates a physical barrier around the pool area which restricts access in general. Moreover, the proposed pool cover does not meet the minimum height of 4 feet required around the pool, nor the requirement of providing a self-closing and self-latching device for keeping the gates or doors closed and locked at all times when the pool is not in use. And also, you can disregard the last sentence here because I emailed all of you copies of the no objection letter from the HOA as well as the abutting property owners.
All right, thank you. And you are going to be representing?
The petitioners, yes, I am.
All right, would you please state your name and your address?
Yes, Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm, P.O. Box 1810 in Covington, and I represent Mr. and Mrs. Glenn Perilou in connection with this variance request. I have some handouts. May I step up and
Certainly.
provide them?
Thank you. That's pretty. When did we get mountains in our? Oh. All right, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity. So this is an interesting matter in that I think, for starters, and I don't think it's a play on words, but my clients do not intend to construct or install a swimming pool in their backyard. We understand, of course, the prohibition about not having fencing for swimming pools. Now, they clearly are putting in a therapeutic spa. And I'm not suggesting that a therapeutic spa is not a structure that doesn't hold water. But there's a lot of differences as it relates to what we intend to do, and perhaps the perception maybe that the permit office and our staff had as it relates to this request. So what I've given you, and I'd like to go through these documents, is first of all, the first 5 pages of the packet are support letters. First, from Mimi Goodyear-Dossett, who's with us this evening and in fact is going to speak in a minute, as the developer of Money Hill. This property is located in Money Hill. And also got the approval of their Architectural Control Committee as it relates to the structure, its height, how it was going to be situated, etc. The other letters are literally from the next-door neighbors on each side, and in one instance, a neighbor on the other side of a next-door neighbor. And in another instance, from a very experienced insurance agent that lives in Money Hill, who's also with us today, John Chiapetta, who gives you some opinions as it relates to not only no objection, but the fact that this structure will have a cover on it, a hard cover, and the hard cover will be locked when the spa is not in use. You will also see that I've given you some photographs, and if you would, I'd like you to take a look at the photographs with me. I've numbered them in the lower right corner. So if you go to page 6 of the handout, you will see in the lower right-hand corner, number 1. And that is a view looking at the rear of the home. And the purpose of this photo is to give you an idea of the elevation differential from the golf cart path on the Money Hill Golf Course, that's at the 18th hole, up to the Perilou home. Why is that important? It's probably a 6 or 8 foot differential. And so if you'll now turn to the next picture, which has a 2 in the lower right-hand corner, you will see that that is a view from the porch looking down. This spa is actually going to connect to the porch and can only be accessed from the porch. It will not have an apron or a patio around it. Picture, if you will, a big bathtub. And maybe that's being a little too simple, but the idea is that it is being constructed in this manner because of very significant back problems that Mrs. Pellegrin experiences. This therapeutic spa has multiple water jets. It is not a structure that's conducive for swimming. Doesn't mean you couldn't swim in it, but it's just not a classic swimming pool. It is something that they're getting for health reasons, and it's important to understand that there's going to be a hard cover. If you look at the freestanding photograph I gave you, that is a sample that was provided to me by Joe Croughton, who's going to be installing the pool. Joe is with us today. To give you some idea, you'll see the hard cover. That is not obviously in this photograph. The cover does not totally cover the pool, but it does. And so the Perilou's plan is to use the spa as needed, and when it's not in use, to have it closed for a variety of reasons. 1, safety. 2, it obviously keeps trash, bugs, leaves, whatever, from getting into the spa. They have grandchildren and soon to be great-grandchildren, so I mean they have concerns about safety as well. And the only access points to the spa will be from the porch. I see that my time is about to evaporate. If I could have just a little longer.
Yes, sir, but you had said you had 2 other people to comment, so you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I mean, if they want to talk, that's...
I appreciate that. I am going to have Ms. Dossett speak in just a minute. So the thinking is, though, the purpose behind the law, as I appreciate it, the fencing, is for safety reasons, and for good reason as it relates to swimming pools, because they're traditionally known as an attractive nuisance. Interestingly, though, as you were looking at the photographs, you might have seen that not more than 75 to 100 feet off the rear of this porch is a 70-acre lake in Money Hill. And I'm not suggesting that it should be fenced. I'm only suggesting or stating it's not fenced. So the point is that there are lots of attractive nuisances out there in the world that don't have fencing. Again, I was around when the parish passed the law that mandated fencing as it relates to swimming pools, and understand the good reasons for that. We come to you as a Board of Adjustment seeking a variance because I don't believe that what I've presented to you suggests that this is going to be a swimming pool or a classic swimming pool with a patio area, a flat area around it, something that would be easy for children to access. That's one reason we went to the neighbors, to make sure that they didn't see this to be a conflict or present a danger. I would say that if you approach this spa from the yard, whether it's from the rear or from the side, you would have at least a 3 or 4 foot differential between grade and the top of the spa. So it just makes it not impossible, but it makes it, I think, unlikely that someone could access it from that point. I think at this point, Mimi, if you could come forward and let the board know how you as developer and the Architectural Control Committee looked at this issue.
Additionally, you have 1 minute and 26 seconds.
I'll try to be less than a minute. Anyway, Mimi Doss with Money Hill, and I certainly sympathize with the administrative staff not wanting to make exceptions when safety is related. And I always am very concerned with safety as a developer. And our architectural review committee is concerned with safety, and they are very hesitant also to make exceptions, because knowing that as time goes on, they'll have to, they'll have to be judged by their previous decisions. And I don't really think the architectural review committee looked at this as an exception to a swimming pool, because it's kind of like a hot tub adjacent to the porch. And, I also happen to be a neighbor, and I walk past this house every day. So it's a long way from the cart path, and it is up on a hill, and really their choice would probably be to fence their porch in, which wouldn't make sense. So anyway, I don't know if I'm probably out of time, but I just wanted to say it was not a problem for the Architecture Review Committee, and like I said, they didn't look at it as an exception, a circumstance, that the hardcover, I think, is adequate, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in summary, we would suggest to you that not only the developer, the Architectural Control Committee, the neighbors that would be most affected, those in the area that have insurance background and expertise, but most importantly, the Paraloos know that this can be a safe apparatus that will not create harm or potential harm to anyone in the neighborhood. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I will open, if you would stand and ask some questions. The board may want you to answer some questions. Can you do that? Oh, I'm sorry. There's an opposition? Is there an opposition here today? No. Okay. All right. With that being stated, I will open the board up to ask questions. All right. Mr. Glockner. Who's going to answer the questions?
Mr. Shane.
Thank you.
Looking at the drawing submitted in the plans, Mr. Shane, this particular drawing here I'm showing you.
Yes?
So looking at the color scheme of the drawing, it says fence, right? So is there a fence on both sides of the house?
No, but there's natural, if you look at the photographs attached to the packet I gave you,
Okay, I see it's more shrubbery area.
yes, you can see those very thick foliage. I'm looking at the photograph marked as number 5.
Yeah, I'm looking at number 5 also. That's why I was asking that question.
Yes, sir.
Because in here it says it's a fence, and my thought process about this whole thing was that, just extending the fence, outside the yard, making a fenced-in backyard, which would probably do away with your beautiful view of the lake, but that would be one option. My other question is looking at picture number 5 again, right? And you're talking about the elevation, correct?
Yes, sir.
So the elevation of this pool is going to be the same elevation as that back porch. So
It'll be flush with
it'll
it,
be
that's
flush
correct.
with that. So what is that, and how far out are we coming with the pool?
We would
How
come
wide would it be?
approximately 13 feet
13 feet.
out.
Down or out?
Out.
So it's 13 by what?
18,
13 by 18.
correct.
That's a pretty big spot. So if you come out by 13 feet, and then what's the elevation at the top of that linear line of the
Sure.
back deck to the ground?
Well, we haven't shot it, but my estimate is that it's probably going to be 4 to 5 feet
4 to 5 feet?
from the top down to grade.
Okay.
Because you can see it's a pretty pronounced drop,
I
the
see
grade.
that. I see that, and I seen what you was thinking about that, how it would be kind of elevated, kind of hard for a kid to climb up on that side.
Yes,
Or
sir.
either side, right? But would they be opposed, are they going to have any kind of gate or locking mechanism from the porch to the spa?
No, only because they will be able to control the use of the spa by putting the cover on it, and the cover has a lock. So not only would they close it with the cover, but they intend to lock it again when they have visits from grandchildren and soon-to-be great-grandchildren. They're very concerned as well, or need to be careful. But, I'm not sure it would be much different than those that have jacuzzis or things of that nature, sometimes inside a home or outside a home. I mean, you certainly have the same risk. I'm not suggesting they're equivalent to a swimming pool. I'm only saying that it's a structure filled with water. And so you have to make sure that you have some protocol to make sure that you ensure safety. And that's why the Paraloos feel very confident that they can control the use of the spa, and otherwise it'll be locked and should not present a problem to anyone.
The only heartburn I have with that, and it's a great concept to put the cover over it and lock it for many reasons, is that, we're humans, we're forgetful. Say if you had to go run to the front, to the door, somebody came in while using your spa, package delivery, what have you, and within that instant, the neighbor's grandchild just happened to run across through that little hedge row and get in that pool and drown. Because the thing is that Louisiana was ranking pretty high on infant deaths in swimming pools, and that's why the parish came aboard and put up this this rule that any kind of pool like that has to be secured with a fence.
Sure. Well, and I don't disagree that that's a possibility, but what's interesting about that discussion of that issue, look at that big 70-acre lake. I mean, when I was a kid, and still am when I'm looking for golf balls along the edge of that lake, I might add that I hit into it. No, but I mean, there's nothing more that would gravitate a kid to water than that lake. Does that mean that the pool, the spa is justified just because there's a lake there? No. But I think it's kind of the same principles that, people hopefully keep an eye on their kids. It's interesting that none of the properties that back up, at least to the 18th hole, have any fencing that I'm aware of in that stretch. And I realize this request is out of the ordinary, otherwise we wouldn't be here with you. I think the thing that's really a difference maker, in my estimation, is that it's flush with the porch and it's really unreasonably accessible from the perimeter. And then when you have a lockdown cover, I mean, they're going to have an opportunity to control it, just as you lock up other things that you don't want people to get around or be around. Would you forget to put your garage door down at night? Someone could get in there, a kid could hurt themselves doing something. But I think people form habits, and hopefully they would be diligent in keeping the cover in place when it's not in use.
So what is the hardship of not being able to put up the fence?
I don't think I can articulate a reason that they can't put up a fence. I think that would be facetious on my part. I think I would rather approach the variance by saying that this is a reasonable alternative to the fence requirement that still ensures safety, because this hard cover would withstand a 300-pound man standing on it. That's how tough that top is. It's ASTM, I think that's the standard. Certified. And so I would suggest to you that this is an alternative, and because it is a therapeutic spa as opposed to a swimming pool that has aprons, etc. around it, that it may be something worthy of consideration.
If you say a hard top, is it like a aluminum lavur roll-out hard top like you would put on the back of a pickup truck?
The material actually is not hard in the sense of being like a hard plastic or acrylic. It's soft, but it is in fact designed to hold up to a 300-pound person standing on it.
Okay.
They wouldn't puncture it, or that's just the way those, I guess it's obviously a very tight cover.
All right. Thank you for answering all my questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Blash? Oh, Mr. Swindell, I'm sorry. Mr. Swindell, I didn't see you over on the other side.
Yeah. Look, spa, swimming pool, I don't think it matters. I mean, it's something that has water in your backyard. I installed a swimming pool a few years ago and went through this exact thing. A couple of observations. I don't have any questions for you. Just the administration, the administrative staff and the permit office, they don't have the ability to make a judgment call here, so that's precisely why you're in front of us. So, like, they did the right thing by denying it because it didn't meet the codes. Now, what I'll say is the spirit of the UDC is one of child safety, and I agree that the solution that you guys are putting in front of us resolves that. And I find it interesting that the UDC will allow a removable fence to be code compliant, as that's what I did at my house, but it's removable. Like, literally, you just go pull these things out of the holes that you put in your pool deck, and you're in a scenario that is right back to not having a protective fence. And I think this one's actually a step from my engineering perspective. I think this one's a step better than a removable fence that the code allows and addresses. But the code, there's no way it can address all the possible scenarios. So, I mean, I'm for this. I think this is a reasonable request, and I think that this is precisely why this board exists, is to make the right decisions for, the right interpretations of what the spirit of the code is in these kinds of scenarios. So,
Mr. Bosch.
Just one quick question with regards to, it was planning and zoning this one before, correct? Before, what was their biggest reason for denying that variance request?
Well, it didn't go before a board.
Okay.
It would have been a request
Okay.
through the permit.
Oh, through,
And I guess it actually got to Mr. Liner, the director.
Okay.
And he
Okay.
believed that he did not have the prerogative to say otherwise.
Okay.
okay.
Could I mention one other thing while I'm
Sure,
here?
sure.
Promise, don't take much time. Well, one of the other things too that I thought about with the fence, and I just didn't articulate it. A fence is, in fact, a good thing anytime you would have a structure with water.
Mm-hmm.
But a fence isn't perfect either. And even if it's supposed to have a gate with a self-latch that's always supposed to close, I went over a lot of fences. I went under a lot of fences as a kid, meaning that you stated it well. There's so many possibilities, opportunities, whatever. And I would just suggest that in these circumstances, this might be a reasonable equivalent.
Yeah, I guess my only observation too is I kind of tend to agree with what Mr. Glocker is saying, that this human error factor is troubling in a sense, in that your best intentions may not be met by a distraction. In other words, someone does, like he described, a person delivering a package or whatever, and you forget it and you leave it. And you mentioned about your garage door. I've left my garage door open just recently all night, and I understand that these things can happen. Intentional? No, it was not intentional on my part, and I don't think that it would be in this thing. The only thing that troubles me is that being a young child myself, at one point in time, getting into things I should not have gotten into, that's the only thing. You were talking about an attractive nuisance, and that is obviously attractive nuisance. The pond, I don't know that you can, I guess you could fence in the lake. Is it reasonable? Probably not. In this situation, though, I think that I'm kind of torn. I don't know what to do on this one at this point in time, because there is still a safety factor that has to be considered for young children who are not going to use their best judgment. So that's all I got.
All right. Do I have for any Mr. Daly again?
Again?
No, first and
No,
foremost.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I actually am, this is a really, it's going to end up being like 50-50, because I'm really extreme on the far side of not granting this. Mostly due to just like safety reasons. Most safety things are not aesthetically pleasing or particularly, accommodating of other needs, but I think this is just purely a personal preference in addition. And so it's like a really far bridge, I think, to bend the rules around this under a personal preference. And I guess I'm not convinced that the safety issue has been resolved. And I understand there's some standards around it, but it's broadly about access to the area. I don't know. I'm pretty much unwilling to bend on the safety issue, so. But I'm willing to hear more.
Well, yes, sir.
I would just like to encourage the other board members. I mean, I've been through this. That's why I'm making another comment that, as you read through the literature they provided, you could have gotten it off the internet. These systems are designed with this particular safety aspect in mind. And regardless of what type of device it is, the fence has to have 4-inch stiles. A regular chain link fence doesn't meet the requirements. You got to do something better than a regular chain link fence. That's why I had to put this temporary fence around my pool. It all boils down to the homeowner's willingness to close it off when they're not present. And it's the same with a regular fence, the same with a temporary fence. But from a child from a protection perspective, I think this more than satisfies the spirit of the code. And, you know, my encouragement is to leave the remaining portion of accountability with the homeowner in this case.
I guess too, you know, if a child is going to go up 4 feet to try and get into, and then the thing's on and or the lid's on and they can't get in, you know, are they going to get hurt falling off, you know, because they haven't been able to get up, you know? To me, I don't know. As the chair, I shouldn't really say anything, but, you know, I think we have a fence around our pool and we have a lake, and one night we had a bunch of teenagers that opened the gate, got in the backyard, and I called 911. They got more scared than hurt, but, you know, so I mean, I think we can what if things, but I do think that we have to consider the age of these people, the therapeutic, which is why they're doing it, and the fact that it's not going to be used to throw beach balls in. I just think that we have to take into consideration all things.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir, you may.
You had mentioned earlier. Ms. Shane, you had mentioned that you have an insurance expert with you or someone with
I do.
Yeah, kind of I'm just saying, I had a pool as well, and
Sure.
we were required to put a fence up around my pool, and the insurance companies would require that.
Right.
For us, anyway.
Yeah, there would be no, the underwriter would not require fencing for this type of therapeutic spa, but Mr. Chiappetto's here and could speak. The other thing that I failed to mention, and I should have, is that just as you see in the photographs, once the spa is installed, they intend to heavily landscape around the perimeter of the spa. Does that mean it makes it impossible to climb through the I guess the flowers, the hedge, whatever type of flora they plant? But the point is that it's not going to be very easy for anyone to access the actual wall, I guess, and then try to scale in some way into the pool. This is John Chiappetta, who lives in Money Hill and is a neighbor.
Yes, I'm John Chiappetta, 45 years plus as a property and casualty agent in the state of Louisiana. And I live in Money Hill as well, and I'm real familiar with the Parish property. You know, the attractive nuisance as an underwriter, a field underwriter is what agents are. We're always concerned about the attractive nuisance. And can someone get in, a child, someone intoxicated or what have you, trip in, fall, hurt themselves or what have you. I can tell you, I have a pool, and I'm on 6 acres in Money Hill, and I just fenced around my pool because I had small grandchildren. Had I had an opportunity to put this cover on, I think that would be great, because I have a 5-year-old that scales a 5-foot aluminum fence and got in there. Now, he wasn't eligible to swim without his swimmies and stuff, and we watch our children when they're around and our grandchildren. I had this opportunity to put this cover. Now, I had a free-form, full-size 38-foot swimming pool with a raised spa. So it's not available for me. But I think, in my opinion, and I would have no problem going to a desk underwriter saying, with this cover that's rated for at least 300 pounds of weight on top of it, not to fail, is more secure and attractive nuisance than a fence. And by the way, I have that self-locking gates on mine. And my pool guy that came in, evidently he messed around with it, and now it doesn't automatically lock. We have to have it readjusted by the fence company to get it to automatically lock. So you're always going to have someone forget something, your garage door, to cover a spa or what have you. But when you look at this property, and if this is the patio, you have probably, I think, in my opinion, probably 6 foot of area that they would have to climb up to get into the top of this, other than entering from the rear patio. Look at the Parish home. It's well manicured, well landscaped. He doesn't want us golfers to see him and his wife walking around in their spa, you know, thinking that we can invite ourselves over and maybe partake in a glass of wine or something when we're out there playing golf. He's wanting to have his privacy, but he also bought that property with that view. So I can certainly understand his position. But as far as an insurance agent that has the amount of years of experience in over 10,000 homes that I insure, this would be far superior than putting that fence, or that my cousin did the same thing that Mr. Swindle did, that temporary fence that you just go over there and you just pull out sections. That's not cutting it either. So that's just my opinion. You take it for what it's worth, but I think this is by far superior.
Thank you. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on Section 200-3.9G that has the standards for a variance approval, stating that the following have to be met. Just reminding the board, the request for the variance is not self-imposed and cannot be considered a personal preference. And also, granting the variance would not create an undesirable precedent for future cases. That's all.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Daly?
Mr. Daly.
Oh, I just want to follow up. I mean, another, because we've had a lot of speculative nature here, but I mean, another reasoning around the fence is that it indicates that there's this water structure there. It's not just to like physically remove people or have access, but I mean, that's sort of a symbol in someone's backyard not to go there. So I mean, it's beyond the just the ability to keep people out. So, I mean, I think, you know, I just feel very strongly of not jeopardizing safety over aesthetics, and so.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Are there any other comments? I will now ask for a motion to overturn the appeal. Wait, that's what we're going to vote on. Is are we in favor of overturning the appeal? Correct.
Somebody just needs to make a motion.
I just need a motion to overturn the appeal.
To overturn
The denial. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. I'll motion to overturn the denial.
Okay, it has been moved to overturn the denial. Do I have a second?
I'm going to move it in a second.
Could we offer a friendly amendment to that motion possibly?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, you can. Go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment that would require, we talked about shrubs and plantings around the rear and the sides of the shrub, which would make it even a little bit harder to get into. I think I'd like to add that as a motion, if that can be accepted.
I'm going to go to legal on that.
You want to do a motion to overturn the denial with the amendment?
With a caveat?
Yes.
Okay.
To modify it, yes.
All right.
Just a moment. So let's make this clear here. When we're talking about making an motion and adding shrubs and planting, so do you have a timeline as to when this shrub and planting would be completed?
We understand that before we get a permit, we would submit a planning plan to staff for their review, so that they would see that it's not only got sufficient breadth or width, but also height, and it has materials that would not only be attractive, but would impede or make it more difficult for someone to access. So we would submit all of that in advance of getting a permit.
So if I'm not mistaken, the permit has already been applied for. So
Yeah.
I guess landscaping would be completed before occupancy.
It would not only be complete before occupancy, but we understand that the permit would not issue until you see the landscape plan.
Okay.
So to make sure that it's significant. And I think the key to that would be not only its width, but also the type of material, the height, and the thickness of the material. Again, to make it less likely that someone would be able to work their way through that landscaped area to get to the peak.
Okay. All right. Can we reformulate this motion again? Because
I just add that to the motion that it be, the required plantings that are approved by staff would be.
Now, would that be in,
Yes.
legally,
in
we
place
could
prior
say,
to an approval or a final inspection or whatever
So-
is necessary.
Right, so now you have a motion to overturn the denial, and then a motion
And-
to overturn the denial with the required.
with the consensus? Okay, so what we are going to vote on is,
We need a second to either,
Right.
or we need a second to either.
I thought Mr. Daly did second it.
Before the amendment. Right, so I need a second to the amendment. That's,
We're really sorry. This is like one of the rare ones we've had to deal with over a denial.
that's the way it's supposed to be handled, in my
I just
understanding.
would like to make a comment here. Like, I understand
I
the
agree.
intent of what Mr. Blosh is asking for, but I think we're overcomplicating this. The request is simply to accept this barrier in, you know, as opposed to the ones that the UDC requires. And for us to add a requirement for landscaping doesn't make a lot of sense because there's no requirement past the date of inspection for them to maintain that landscaping. You know, like nobody's just gonna show up and inspect the landscaping at some point, you know, like. And there's no engineering, there's no ASTM standard about landscaping or these things, but there's an ASTM standard that is exceeded by this barrier that they're recommending. And now we're adding something more that's just on nuance or gut feel. And I don't like that, you know.
Well, can I
Okay,
have the floor, because I'd like to respond to that if we could.
yes, please.
As I understand it, we're well within our rights to add any sort of additional requirements to allow a variance to go through. So I think that, and I've seen this done many times. I think that this actually provides a safer standard than that fence that we're talking about, that 4-foot fence, or even that fence that could be removed. It seems as though the gentleman has already talked about doing this anyway. In my opinion, well, I'll just tell you this, that's how I'm going to vote yes for it. Aside from that,
Okay.
I'm not going to vote yes for it.
All right, so we're going to, okay, it has been moved that we accept the denial, or that we,
We can do it simply just, we need a second for the motion to overturn. the
Okay.
denial, And then we can go to the vote on the variance later.
He
All right.
did. I thought-
Okay.
he did second it. Yes, so it has been moved and seconded.
And then I offered a
And
friendly
then,
amendment to that
but,
motion.
so let's do two, or do we do one?
Let's do two.
Let's do two.
Okay.
Because I think we want to establish that we have
Okay.
approved or not approved, and then
And then grant the
grant the variance, okay, with the modification. All right, so all those in favor, please say yay. No.
We're voting.
Yeah, it needs to be a vote. So.
No, I meant vote. I mean, I'm sorry, y'all have me today.
And that's just for the
This is strictly for overturning the denial,
right.
and then we'll add to the variance.
Okay.
So we have 2 yays and 3 nays.
Mhm.
So motion failed.
All right? I'm very sorry, the motion has failed. I don't quite understand.
You need 4 votes.
No, I do.
Yeah, but
Oh,
yeah, it was my understanding we would have come back if this didn't pass, and another motion could be offered with,
We have to, that had to be first.
There wasn't enough votes.
There wasn't enough votes to do any kind of an amendment. We had
okay, I
3
misunderstood
nays.
then, because that's why I wanted to add the shrubbery in there.
Well, this is just.
This was just to say that we are over,
Okay.
that we're saying, what we're, okay, is the board clear on what we were voting on? Well, even, Mr. Bosch, if you said yes, then
I sort of follow Mr. Swindell's that it should just be a clean decision.
it has to be. This has to be, and then we could have come back, but
Well, if it had passed, yeah.
that's what I said, if it had
And I
passed.
misunderstood that because I did not, but
It wouldn't have mattered.
Ms. Chairwoman,
Yes, sir.
don't shoot me, I'm sorry, but
I don't have a gun.
thank you. If I could ask perhaps that for those that did not vote for the prevailing decision, could consider a motion for reconsideration and ask that the variance be approved with a specific condition of the landscaping, and if that landscaping is a condition, it will have to be perpetually observed. If not, it's subject to code enforcement review. In other words, it becomes a part of the variance. So I feel like there was a little bit of a disconnect. I'm not being critical, but as
No,
it
I
relates to the vote and an anticipated second vote, I'm not sure the package ever got a chance to be considered by the body. So I believe a motion for reconsideration is a possibility, and I believe that the variance, the denial of the director can be overturned with a condition of landscaping pursuant to a plan that would be submitted before the permit issues.
I would
So
have to turn to legal.
The motion on the floor was the motion to overturn the denial, which needed 4 votes. It failed because there were only 3. Once that decision was overturned, then there would be a vote on the actual variance, allowing it to fruition. So in order to do a motion for reconsideration, one of those 3 people who voted no would have to make that motion.
Right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to make that motion at this point in time, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we are in 100% agreement that this should be overturned.
Did you vote no?
I voted no, yes, I voted no. Anticipating that there was going to be an additional vote, because I was trying to add a friendly amendment, which would allow for shrubbery. So does that satisfy the
That would,
motion requirements?
it would need a second.
Okay.
I'll second it, just purely process-wise and making it clear and make sure it's all.
Okay.
Okay, could you please restate it so that Helen can,
Okay, I think I can.
so that it can be clear what we are
I
actually.
would like to provide a motion that the director's denial be overturned and allow for the variance to be accepted or approved with the stipulation that there'll be shrubs that meet the approval of staff in place prior to the final inspection and approval of the project.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Swindell. All right, I am going to call for a vote. Please vote with your screens.
We have 3 yeas and 2 nays.
Oh, well.
Motion fails.
Very sorry.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Moving on, we are going to address 2024-4050. The variance requested is by the applicant to reduce the required side yard setback from 7.5 to 5 feet. I would ask Ms. Helen to please read the findings for the parish.
The objective of the request is to allow for a proposed 1,200 square foot addition to an existing home, being a 2-story, 40 feet by 10 feet and 14 feet 9 inches slab to be located 5 feet from the northern side property line. The request is consistent with the setbacks currently provided for the slab and roof line of the existing residence, which at the time conformed with the required side yard setback at the time of construction.
All right. Who is representing this case today? Would you please step forward and give me your name and your address, please?
Hi, my name is Janine Bridges. My address is 233 Blue Crane 1 Drive in Slidell, 70461.
Thank you. What would you like to present to the board today?
When I had these plans drawn up, the intention was to move my mother and my handicapped sister in, and I had paid for them then and all and everything before. I guess it changed, and I didn't realize that it changed by that 2.5 feet. And I'd like to just go right even with my property line now in my backyard. And I got permission from my neighbor, and our homeowner's president is Jeff Corbin. He's actually here today. I saw him, and he's the president, and he gave permission to Mainly, it's a hardship if I have to get these plans drawn again, because I've already paid for them once, and there's a lot on my plate right now. So I'm nervous, but I would like to just keep it in line.
All right. All right.
I'm sorry, I don't have an attorney or anything.
That's okay.
I was like, wow. The people before me had pictures and everything else. I was like, oh, God.
We appreciate you coming and presenting. Is that all that you have right now? What we will open the board to
Yeah, all I need is those 30
questions.
inches to stay even with, in my backyard.
There's no one else in the audience.
For the record, is there anyone else here to oppose? Seeing no opposition, then I will open it to the board to ask questions. Mr. Swindell.
When did this actually change from 5 feet to 7.5?
They told me August. I'm not sure if that's proper.
No, it was,
I mean,
Well,
no, it was not we
Yeah.
adopted a new ordinance in August. However, this has been in place for probably, I would say, 10 years.
yeah, okay. I mean, like, I just wanted to make sure. It's not our place to consider the. Like, I know it would stink if you had to go pay them to redo it. It's not really. We're not supposed to consider that factor when we're trying to make these decisions. So anyway, I only asked that question to say the individual that you had do this design should know better. You
I
know,
understand that.
like that's like if at the end of the day this board decides to not approve this request, I think you should go back to this design service and say they gave you a design that doesn't meet the ordinances that have been in place for a long time. They should have known better than to do that.
yeah, I called him and asked him that too
Yeah.
after, but I had already paid him, so there's
All
no going
that-
back from me.
Yeah, all that being said, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is why we're here. Like, for you to carry the same profile of your house,
Right.
Your neighbors are good with it. I mean, this to me, this makes sense. And obviously, it meets the same standard that was set when your home was built,
Right.
which I think is appropriate. So I'll be voting to approve this request.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All righty. Mr. Glockner.
Yeah, I looked at this also, and it would look kind of weird, huh, to put an addition
Yeah.
on, just stepped in a
I
little
know.
bit, you know, so it doesn't make any sense to me, and aesthetically, and I mean, your neighbors probably would be more mad that
He
you
would
built it
be.
in accordance with it, because it's gonna look crazy. So I'll be voting for this. This is a no-brainer to me.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. I don't know who was first.
Daley.
Sean?
Okay.
Mr. Daley.
Awesome. And you can see, I always agree with everyone on the board. So, no, I agree with this. And I think it would be much different just as like this is a non sequitur a little bit, but if it was on the street side and into the street setback, I think that would make it quite a bit different than it just being the
Yeah.
interior side yard.
Thank you.
All righty. And Mr. Balash?
I would just have to concur. I've seen so many of these cases before that
Yeah.
it just makes common sense.
Thank you.
know.
And I was going to say we've considered these same before and done various. So no further questions for Ms. Bridges. I will go ahead and entertain a motion, please.
I move to approve the variance as requested.
All right, it's been moved to accept the variance as requested. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please vote.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're
I really
welcome.
do.
Thank you.
I know not to get a pool, I don't think. I want one, but I can't afford one anyway. So. Thank you so much. And,
Thank you.
What do I do next?
You can go to the permit to the planning department so they can release your.
In
home.
Slidell, I can go back that way?
No, you can go to the planning department in building B.
And then I just tell them I came from here and that y'all approved it, and they'll know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is he coming back in? All right. Well, seeing that we, okay, yeah, I see that, Mr. Shane.
Well, I have comments on it too.
We need to get him in here, or I'm gonna Okay, let's all vote on this third one, since there was no one here. Oh, there he is. No.
Thank you.
All righty, this is 2024-4052, the variance request by an applicant to appeal a decision by a parish official in regard to the applicability of a definition driveway signs as defined under UDC 600-4.3 for the proposed directional signs and scale sign on a property being developed as a gas station. A variance to increase the maximum allowable square footage of a driveway sign from 4 feet to 14 feet, trucks and arrow signs, and from 4 square feet to 109 square feet. It is a highway commercial property. Ms. Helen, would you please read the findings?
The applicant has presented a sign package which refers to the proposed signage as directional sign. As such, the applicant is claiming the signage should not be governed by the driveway signage definition and therefore not be governed by the 4 square foot maximum area. The Director of the Department of Planning and Development has determined that these proposed signs meet the definition and the intent of driveway signage regulation and therefore must not exceed 4 square feet. The applicant is appealing the decision made by the Planning Director in regards to the applicability of the definition of driveway signs in relation to the proposed directional signs and scale sign. The objective of the directional sign is to separate truck traffic from typical vehicular traffic and direct the truck traffic towards the rear of the access of the property and are located along Browns Village Road. The objective of the scale sign is to provide signage within the site, directing the truck traffic towards the scale and indicating the entrance to and exit out of the scale. Should the board uphold the interpretation of the Planning Director and consider the proposed signs driveway signs, the applicant is requesting an increase in the maximum allowable square footage of the driveway signs as follows: from 4 square feet to 14 square feet for the directional sign, and from 4 square foot to 109 square feet for the scale sign. Note that on November 12, 2024, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the adoption of a new definition, sign private directional, on-premise signs that direct vehicular and pedestrian traffic into or within a premise and do not exceed 4 square feet in size. The formal amendment of the definition will be considered as a parish council on January 2nd, 2025.
All right. Would you please state your name and address?
Thank you. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm at P.O. Box 1810 in Covington. I represent Quick Trip Corporation, which is a petitioner in this matter. And again, I have some handouts.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, mine too.
So Quick Trip Corporation is in the process of constructing a convenience gas truck facility at the corner of Brown Switch and US Highway 11. And I think all of my cases are interesting, but this case is interesting as well, in that getting into the permit process as it relates to signs, it was determined that the signage package that we presented along our driveways and also our scale sign would be limited by a 4 square foot max, if you will, as per the new UDC. So the reason I have handed out to you your notice of disposition, many of you on the board, or some of you on the board, granted a variance to Love's for the facility that they're doing at the northwest quadrant of Highway 1088 and I-12. And they came to you for similar relief, and in that instance only needed relief as it related to one sign. But the reason that I think that case is very pertinent in this matter is that staff considered that scale sign to be a directional sign. It's identified as such both in the staff report that I gave you, that's the second page, and also on the first page, the notice of disposition. It's clearly refers to the scale sign or the sign in question to be a directional sign. Interestingly, when the new code was adopted, and I don't know the reasons why, but there was no max or metric placed on directional signs. So when my client came in to apply for signage, we had no reason to believe that the signage would not be treated as a directional sign, and I'm contrasting that to a driveway sign, and we believed that there would be no limitation on the face. Of course, the director felt otherwise and believed that there should be a limitation of 4 feet. I think the mere fact that staff and the council saw fit to go forward with new legislation amending the provision is suggestive of what I've just said, and that is that I guess for some reason that provision was left out of the new code. I don't know, again, intentional or through negligence. I don't think it would be fair to suggest that because there's no limit that you could just build a sign of any size. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, we understand that, and we're not, in my view, requesting that. I mean, a 14 square foot sign, and you've seen in your staff report, the prototype, in my view, it's not excessive. It's an internal drive. It's not something that's going to bother the motoring public. I don't think it presents aesthetic problems or concerns. Now, the scale sign is very important, and maybe all of you were educated in the Love's case about this. I really didn't know anything about the scales that these facilities have. Why is that signage so important? It's to segregate, if you will. If I pull in to buy a tank of gas for my car or go into the convenience store, that's one thing. If you're a trucker coming in, you might need diesel and you might need something else. But one of the things that they do a lot of is that they weigh these trucks and they get certified weights per axle. And it's because they know that they're getting ready to go to a weigh station, if you will, typically at state lines. So they want to know if their weight is properly distributed per axle, and there's actually a process wherein we not only take the weight, but we certify it, and it's recognized by the jurisdictions, and it gives those truckers comfort in knowing that when they enter into a new jurisdiction, they know what the weights are per axle. For that reason, we really want to make sure that the truckers know exactly where to go to get on the scale. They've got to position their truck properly on the scale so that the weight per axle is measured properly. And that's really the whole gig behind the sign and the size of the sign. The sign is really like a goalpost. It's got 2 poles and a crossbar with the sign across the crossbar. I can't tell you that the sign couldn't be smaller. It could be. But the idea really, though, is to get the attention of the truckers. It's an internal sign, as you can see on the site plan, and it's to make sure they know where to go. Now, presumably, if they're repeat customers, they probably don't need the sign. They're going to know where to go. But you'll see there's a call box mechanism for them so that when they get there, they get on the call box, they call personnel inside the center to know that they're getting ready, they need to weigh, et cetera, et cetera. So with all of this having been said, when we filed this application, I did it sort of twofold, if you will. First, I take exception with the decision of the director, who did one of 2 things. He either believed this to be a driveway sign, and he decided that there would be a 4-foot max on all of the signage, or if he believed they were a directional sign, which is what staff had deemed the signage to be on the Loves project, he still felt there should be a 4 square foot minimum, yet there's no 4 foot minimum requirement in the definition for a directional sign in the new code. So the second, I guess, alternative that I present to you is that if you believe that the director did the best he could under the circumstances, fine. But I still wanted you to have an opportunity to consider granting a variance for the signage, just as you did in the Loves case. Hopefully I haven't garbled that up too much and made it any more complicated than it needs to be. But that is the essence while we come before you today. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them at the appropriate time.
Thank you. I will now open for questions, and I see.
There's no opposition.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, is there any opposition to this? I apologize since you were the only one there. Since I see none, I will open up the board for questions. And Mr. Swindell.
First, I need to make an observation that my vote was incorrectly recorded in that April meeting. This document that he presented right now has me as voting yay for that. I definitively voted nay, and remember this exact conversation.
I do
having
too.
This exact conversation. And I just looked at the YouTube, and it's definitely a nay on YouTube.
I will make sure it gets modified.
Yeah, so, Mr. Shane, how many Loves truck stops are there that have had signage restricted to levels that St. Tammany Parish is requesting?
Loves are Quick Trip.
Well, Quick Trip,
Quick
sorry.
Trip. They tell me that this is the only jurisdiction where they've had this kind of issue as it relates to their signage.
Yes.
Now, that could be the company line that they give me. I deal with an agent from Texas, but they do these facilities all throughout the Gulf South, and they've just never had this come up before with internal signage.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of figured that they built one close enough to one of these communities that is restrictive and have dealt with this before. I searched a little bit. I found one outside of Atlanta that they definitely have reduced signage at the street pointing where trucks, where cars should enter, that kind of thing. It is difficult to find one where they've restricted the cat sign, the scale sign. But I'll be honest, I think, look, this goes back to if we're doing this in the name of safety or otherwise, then like the one that exact one that I looked at in Atlanta, you go to Google Earth, you can zoom in and you can see the cat scale sign. The biggest letters on the sign are cat and scale. And you know how big the do not enter portion is? It's like minuscule on there. And yet we're up here saying that, oh, this is all in the name of safety, that this is needed, but the sign is tremendously taken by advertisement more than it is safety directions. And so, I'm just going to say it again. I've said it before. We have got to, the UDC was put in place to make this parish, to put some restriction on what we're trying to do. And we got to start somewhere. And I think it's unfortunate you're requesting all these things at the same time. To some degree, I think those directional signs make sense. It's like trucks should go here, cars there. It doesn't appear that there's any real advertising even on the ones that y'all are putting. So I'm not opposed to those. What I am opposed to is the big sign that says cat and claiming that the truck drivers don't know where to go if we don't put this big ass sign up. Like, they know it's going to be right next to the gas pump. It's going to be the same direction. A smaller sign is going to get them there. These truck drivers know exactly where they're going when they turn onto the site.
Okay, but now, are you looking at the sign, though, proposal that we have in the staff report?
Yeah.
Okay, because that one says, it shows our logo, QT, but it says Certified Scales Entrance.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I'm using CAD, but it's the same thing.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, like the QT is, I don't know, to me, it's more about advertising than it is about site safety.
Well, we can take the QT off of it if need be. That's certainly that's not the need for the sign or the size of the sign. It's really to make sure, and again, you can see there's a front and a back. You have an entrance and an exit.
Yeah, I think some of those are perfectly appropriate. I mean, like telling trucks and cars where to turn is probably a necessity. Exit only, do not enter, I think those are great. But
I would like to turn it over to our legal right now. Mr. Swindell, I made an assumption you were finished.
Oh, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I just wanted to bring the board's attention to a few UDC sections. Number one, regarding section 100-12B, rules of interpretation, rules of language, subsection 1, the specific controls the general when it comes to the rules. Section 600-4.1B2, miscellaneous signs for non-commercial uses. Where there is a conflict not otherwise addressed by this UDC, the more restrictive will apply. In terms of section 600-4.3B5 defines driveway signs as signs for internal circulation within a site, should not exceed 4 square feet in sign area. Directional signs is defined as signs limited to directional messages. So I just wanted to bring your attention to the two definitions and the rules of interpretation that are outlined in the UDC. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Daly.
Okay, this one confused me because I was, just for the location of the signs we're talking about. So we have a site plan, and I think we have 3 spots on the exterior, 1 on the interior. I just wanted to make sure I had a handle on what these were. That would be 3 of these truck directional signs on the exterior perimeter of the site, and then the quick trip scales and the do not enters on the interior. We're showing a truck on here. Sorry, it's small. Showing a truck right where that would be.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
You'd have trucks with an arrow on the 3, what
On
we'll
the
call
3
exterior perimeter. They're on internal drives, but it's to show them trucks where to go. It's directing them, which we
Okay.
think is a safety and also, I guess, a convenience.
Okay.
And then there is the larger sign, the 109 square foot one, that's squarely on the interior here.
Correct.
Presumably behind a building?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Potentially? Okay.
All right. All right. Is that all, Mr. Daly?
Yeah, yes.
All right. Mr. Glockner.
Yes, this is an undeveloped shopping area in Slidell area. I went and looked at the travel center in Slidell and looked at their signage. Their signage is incompatible with what they're proposing here as a QT or Catskill or Love's or any of the other truck stops. There might be a gas station, but this is basically going to be a truck stop, because in the drawing itself, it also has parking. I'm pretty sure they're going to rent out parking spaces for these trucks to stay overnight, which is highly needed in this parish right now, because if you ever get up early in the morning, you're going to see all those trucks on the side of the interstate on the on and off ramps where it says no parking, and they're parking there anyway because there's no place for them to go. Hence another reason why he brought up this past thing for on 59 on
Love.
1088 is that that's going to be another truck stop, which is what we need around here. I don't have any heartburn with this signage. The only thing I have heartburn with is it being laid out in 2 folds for us to consider. And so the variance request is number 1 and number 2. So number 1, I'm not going to be for that at all, because I'm not going to go. I don't think it's our place or to make a judgment call on that. So we can go with the number 2 variance request for the signage, but I'm not going to go and say, hey, Mr. Whoever, you're wrong, or the UDC is wrong, or it's worded wrong, or what have you. So that's not. I don't think that's in our preview at all. Number 2 is with the signage, and so that's how I'm thinking about this right now. Legal, if you have any interpretation on the 2 different number 1s and number 2s.
Yeah, if we vote to not to overturn the decision, then there will not be another vote. It's just like the last time.
Well, why is it split up in 2 then? That's my question.
Because if we overturn the vote, then there would need to
Then
be
there
a
would be a
variance.
variance.
And with modifications to it.
Okay.
I don't think it's.
With all due respect, I think I made 2 requests in this petition.
Right. First was the appeal of the decision, and then if that's not granted, then doing a variance request.
Yes, but there will be a second vote unless the first vote is an overturn.
Correct.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's what I needed to know.
Right.
Right.
So the thing is, if we don't overturn number 1, then we have no chance to overturn number 2.
That's correct.
That's right.
Signage
That's-
provide.
That's
Right,
correct.
because we're upholding the denial.
We're upholding the denial.
The director of development.
It's a decision that they are driveway signs, and the second one is a variance of the driveway sign.
But it's a decision of a parish official, so it is an official appeal of his decision, claiming that he was in error in making that determination.
Okay, I understand now, and I appreciate that because
I don't
I've never seen this
understand.
before in documentation.
That's why I said this is an unusual, and as you know, we don't usually
It looks
have.
like this is a day of unusuals.
It is. It's a day of constant contrast.
So I'm not finished, have another question for staff. In our new UDC, is there any definitions for things for truck stops? I mean, for their signage, or is truck stops and gas stations all lumped into one?
Correct. We have a new definition for a directional sign, and the scale sign is considered as a directional sign. And in regards to any other signage, then it will be a monument sign. If they would just want to advertise QT and the price sign, which they already requested a sign variance for that in the past.
Okay.
But, so right now, the scale sign and the directional signs to direct the traffic, the truck traffic in this case, are considered right now as driveway signs, and then we added to the staff report the new definition.
And the new definition that's going to be voted on
The new definition is going to be voted on by the council in January.
in January.
All right, legal.
And that's just following up on what Helen said. That's where the rules of interpretation apply, and I wanted you to know that, the specific controls.
Okay.
So,
That's
but-
what's going to be voted on, though, in January. That's what you read me.
No.
No, that is the rules of the UDC right now.
Okay.
The specific controls the general.
Can you read that one more time,
Sure.
please?
So, Section 100-12B, Rules of Interpretation, Rules of Language, subsection 1, the specific controls the general. Section 600-4.1B2, miscellaneous signs for non-commercial uses. Where there is a conflict not otherwise addressed by this UDC, the more restrictive will apply. Driveway signs is defined as signs for internal circulation within a site. Directional signs are merely defined as signs limited to directional messages.
All right.
And I did want to go back to the Board of Adjustment, Section 100-2.5, Board of Adjustment. C, powers of the board. Number 1, to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged there is an error in any order, requirement, administrative decision, or determination made by the Department of Planning and Development.
Okay. God bless you. Are there any other comments? If there are none, yes, Mr. Swindell.
Sorry.
No problem.
Just, I understand everything that legal is saying, but could he not have made the request to overturn the decision that was made by our parish official and just made a request for a variance on this, like just left it alone as calling them driveway signs, or, and then made the request for having a larger one?
That decision had been made, is my understanding.
Right.
Yeah,
He
but-
could have went just
He
for
could
a,
have,
Yeah, I mean,
just
like.
for a variance, right, but officially, the Director of Planning has made that decision.
Yeah, okay.
Madam Chairwoman,
yes, sir.
I had a minute 21. Would it be out of order for me to use that?
No, sir. Go ahead before we do a motion.
I appreciate it. I forgive my confusion, but I'm of an impression that if you do not reverse the decision of the director, the case is over.
That's correct.
If you will look at my application, and in particular, it's in your packet, look at the second page of my letter. I clearly made 2 independent claims. and if, I'll give you a minute to find my letter in the staff report. Go
I
to
see it.
page 2. The relief sought includes, number 1, I don't need to read, but that's essentially challenging the decision of the director. The second matter says, alternatively, if the board does not reverse the interpretation, I seek a variance as to the size of the 4 proposed directional signs. I should have every right, I think, to get a vote on both issues. And I respect the fact that if you don't approve either, I understand that, I'm a big boy. But I know that if you don't approve the first, it doesn't mean that you can't consider these signs, directional signs, and can also consider granting a variance as to their square footage. I couldn't have made it any clearer. It's 2 separate and independent grounds. It's not like the first case where one was hinged to the other.
Thank you. I will go to legal on that.
The language is different.
The language is different.
Right, so for the first one, but there's 2 just separate votes. You can either overturn the denial, and then if that doesn't go through, then he can request a variance.
Okay.
But essentially, that would be overturning the denial.
Okay.
No.
All right, so as I understand it, we can, if the board so chooses, we can support the decision of the parish official and then move on to the variance for a vote on that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I was told the other one.
Out of an abundance of caution.
I don't know.
Let's just do it that way.
And
Okay. With that being said, Mr. Daly.
one more question, statement, discussion point. So I think there is actually a huge difference between the two. Number 2 has 2 parts. One are the driveway signs going from 4 feet to 14 feet, which are on the exterior of the site. And the other one is for the, scale sign with the intercom on the interior of the site. So I find those pretty different. Well, right. So it's very large, but it's also different in terms of where they are and how they're, viewed in public. So I would prefer to break those into 2 votes because I view them to be.
Okay.
You're welcome to do so.
Yeah. You can modify that.
You can modify the variance with a motion.
Because I think they're very different in their package because I think, well, there's the A and B in the request, in the formal request.
You're welcome to make a motion to overturn or not to overturn the decision of the parish official and make a second motion for the directional signs that are requested to be placed within the green space area to direct truck traffic, and make another motion for the scale sign.
Okay. Let's go ahead and vote. Let me hear a motion on whether or not we are going to overturn the decision by the parish official. Do I have a motion?
I will make that motion for portion 1 of this variance
You can request to speak, please.
I'll make that motion for portion 1 of this variance request to overturn the decision made by the parish official.
Okay, so you
All right.
want to overturn and not agree with.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay in the affirmative with what the request is. The request is to overturn, so that's what I'm proposing.
Legal.
I'll second that, understanding that we're voting for the first part of the variance requested as requested.
How do I need to word it
So
to make sure we're
a
good?
vote would be,
Mr. Glockner, please you put your mic on.
so, what I'm understanding is I'll make a proposal,
Oh wait, I have a motion on the floor right
as a
now.
motion to accept it as requested.
So are you
So-
seconding
If we're. if we
Mr.
vote-
Swindell's motion?
And I'm asking a
No.
question. So if his motion, and if we vote nay, then it doesn't pass, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Swindell, is your motion to concur with the planning director
No.
decision? No, it is to overturn.
I'm just trying to stay with what the variance request is. The request is to overturn, so I'm just trying to stick with that as the motion. So, I don't know, let legal tell me which way do we need to state it? We've been through this.
So a motion to overturn the director's decision regarding the driveway sign from 4 square feet to 14 square feet.
No,
No, I'm sticking with number one, which is just about his interpretation of, the labeling of driveway signs versus directional signs.
Okay.
Correct.
So just a motion to overturn
The decision by the parish official.
That's how it
Right.
was submitted. in other words.
Right.
Okay, so you,
All right.
yes,
Do I have a second on that?
Yeah, so just for clarity here, a yay vote on the motion that I'm making would be to
To
overturn
overturn.
the decision.
Correct.
That's the motion I'm making.
All right. It has been moved to overturn the decision made by the parish official. Do I hear a second?
oh, I thought Mr. Glockner
no,
seconded
I'm
it.
not gonna second that. 'Cause
Okay, I'm going to second it, but
need to vote
we've
on
done
it.
this before because we didn't do it.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded to overturn the decision based by the parish official. Please use your screen to vote.
Okay, so wait.
If you vote yes, you're saying that you want to overturn
Just for
the.
clarity, I am voting nay because I'm supporting the parish official's interpretation.
I
of
understand.
Signage, so.
So, but in keeping with the way it was worded. If you vote yes, you are voting to overturn what the parish official
Correct.
defined. Please,
Now, my question is, I get that part.
Mr.
Is there a second vote after that?
Yes.
That's what I'd like to know. Okay, that's all I need to know.
If this
All
does
right.
not pass.
Please vote with your signs. Oh, my goodness.
So the motion failed.
All right, the motion failed. Moving on to number 2, a variance to increase the maximum allowable square footage of a driveway sign from 4 square feet to 14 square feet, signs, trucks, and arrows, and from 4 square feet to 109 square feet. Mr. Swindell.
Oh, I'm not still active, but I know we're going to ask, can we separate this into 2 different votes? The directional signage and, the street signs that say trucks and cars and the big sign that says scale that's 20 feet tall.
Right, so I'm actually going back to the applicant's part where there's an A and a B. So the A part is the first half, which is the 4 square feet to 14 square feet. Those are generally speaking the 3 road perimeter signs.
Correct.
And then once that vote's taken, I'm going to make a motion, or whomever can make a motion, for the vertical pole sign, which is the interior scale sign with the intercom. And that would be the second vote I'm proposing to request.
Let me confer with legal real quick on that, please.
There are 2 parts of that decision. You can modify
So you could modify the motion?
yeah, you can do 2 separate votes because it's 2 separate decisions. It's 2 separate
Yeah.
decisions.
Okay. So we have been determined, it has been determined there are 2 requests, or 2 variances that we are going to vote on. So the first variance would be to increase the maximum allowable square footage of the driveway sign from 4 square feet to 14 square feet. So is there any further discussion on that, or do I have a motion?
So I can make a motion to approve the variances submitted to increase the maximum allowable square footage of a driveway sign from 4 feet to 14 square feet.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to increase the maximum allowable square footage of the driveway from 4 square feet to 14 square feet. Please vote with your.
We have 3 nays and 2 nays. Motion fails.
Okay.
Is there any, so is there any objection to the increase of the driveway sign from 4 square feet to any other square footage, or it will be 4 square feet?
They didn't give us any options, so
Okay.
I don't know.
Is there a way to, I don't know if we can postpone this or we can, to come back with,
Well, I can say that, and I was hoping to say it before the vote, but we're amenable to something less if the 14 number is the problem. And I mean, I'll suggest that 10 feet, 10 square feet. And likewise, before you vote on the scale sign, if you want to have a discussion about 2 poles, 1 pole, and the size of the sign, I'd like to have that opportunity so it's not an all or nothing. Please.
So anyone that voted that voted nay to overturning can actually make a motion to reconsider. That would need to be seconded.
And 8 or 10 feet would be wonderful.
For discussion, I mean, I'm in my.
Mr. Daly, please.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Daly?
There we go. In my vote and in my intent is that this would be, I was sticking with the directional signs not to exceed 4 feet. So in that sense, I'm sticking with it. These are directional signs, that first set. And then my intent of breaking those apart is I don't really think that the internal sign is necessarily a directional sign. It's more of like a structure with an intercom that's, you know, indicating the scales. And I don't view that as necessarily a directional sign. And so I would vote in the affirmative for that one. It was these exterior signs that were oversized beyond, you know, triple the size of the allowable under the code that I was voting against.
All right. Mr. Swindell, did you have a comment?
Yeah. So I'll say 2 things. One, I think to Mr. Daly is just the size of the scale sign is, and look, conveniently the scale is on the interstate side of the property. The sign is giant and it's lit. And, you know, me personally, I like to support the UDC. I think it's unnecessary. That's just I think it's more of an advertisement sign to make sure the truckers driving by see it. You know, whether it has QT on it or not, that's just my take. And secondly, I'm hesitant to say our minimums, well, you know, I would compromise at 7 square feet because there's been nothing shown of like what would they look like if they had to meet the UDC, the sizes that are required now, and that may be perfectly, you know, acceptable. Like to me, it's like, oh, we didn't vote for this, so what's less? I just think we need to be careful in saying just setting a smaller amount just here without seeing some options in front of us. You know.
Want me to address that?
Sure.
I think we would just shrink it, and if you have some ideas as to how you would like us to shrink the 14 square feet, no, but I mean, we'll be specific now. I'm not suggesting, I mean, you're right, it would be ludicrous if it were 14 feet long and 1 feet wide, right? But that's not what I had in mind. I would think we would still stay within the same general parameters that we have now. And I mean, again, if we wanted to just maybe do half the sign, the same width, and maybe do half of the height.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's hard for me to say whether I would like, you know.
Okay.
Like I hate to be a judge of what's appropriate.
Well, in the notice of deposition that we have, we voted to increase the maximum allowable square footage of a directional sign from 4 square feet to 30.75 square feet. So, I mean,
Legal.
I just wanted to bring the board's attention to section 101.2 Rules of Interpretation, subsection A generally. In interpreting and applying the provisions of this UDC, there shall be held to be the minimum requirements for the promotion of the public safety, health, convenience, comfort, prosperity, and general welfare. Minimum values of the UDC are thresholds and are not intended to be target values. Just bring that to your attention.
okay, thank you. All right, there we have it.
I have
So-
a question.
Yes, sir.
So on this certified scale entrance and the square footage of the sign, is the overall square footage including the poles, not just the sign itself?
No, it doesn't include the poles.
It doesn't include the posts?
No.
Okay. So a certified scale is approximately 6 foot high and 17.8 feet wide, right? 17.8 feet will have to be sufficient because the trucks are going to be driving through that. As far as the 6 foot in height on the sign, I'm not going to have no issues with this. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the certified scale internal sign as requested.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to,
Moved by Mr. Glockner to approve as requested for the scale sign and seconded by
Seconded.
Mr. Blosh.
correct. All right. Mr. Blush.
You know, taking just some common sense approach to this, again, within the interior of the lot, I don't see that it presents a problem myself. I'm kind of like with you, Ms. Daly, that's not the issue here. The larger entrance signs like that, yeah, I mean, that could be all kinds of issues that we don't even anticipate at this point in time. So I think that to stick with what the UDC already says is probably in our best interest. But from the interior of the lot, I don't think it makes that big a deal. I really don't.
Yeah. So that's what we're voting on.
That's correct.
Hang on, I just want
Mr.
to
Santel.
make this observation. If we're going to hinge ourselves on this word interior, how far interior does it have to be? I mean, like, literally, this is across a storm drainage pond that's going to be highly visible from the interstate. So, how far, like, 3 feet? Is that, or does it have to be 20 feet? That's all arbitrary. I'm just.
It's way inside of the drawing.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know, like, I think let's be careful with.
It looks pretty, I mean, if you
Yes,
look at
it's
the scale,
interior,
it's
but
definitely far into the interior.
Yeah, but it's so if I carry the same logic though, this is the trouble with what your statement. If I carry the same logic to all signs, well, now all he's got to do is move all his signs inside to come satisfy this board and make them all interior. You know, so I just say that to stress to be careful getting caught up in interpretation and nuances.
Well, and I think you have to also go beyond that too, that you have to look at the idea of, you know, are providing direction for the people as they're navigating within the lot.
Correct.
Is that actually aiding safety, or is it taken away from it? And to me, it just adds to safety, because at that point in time, a trucker knows exactly where he's going to that scale. He's not looking around, not paying attention to what's happening around him now, because he's looking for, where do I go? Where do I go? So I think it serves a need. And we talked about safety being one of the considerations for that. So I just, to me, I get what you're saying. You don't want to advertise. You don't want these people to make money. I get that. But the point being,
We do need
that
development.
I don't think that it's gonna hurt. I think it's gonna help us when it comes to safety.
How do the truckers know how to get to the gas pumps?
Well, that
They
sign
don't have
says
a-
trucks.
They don't have a big lit sign that says gas pumps here. These
signs
guys
says-
I think we're-
know. I mean, the
gentlemen-
drivers know. That's like,
Okay, I think we all have heard the motion, and the motion has been seconded. Discussion followed. I would now like to call for the vote.
Four yeas and one nay, motion carries.
All right. Thank you. With that being said, I would like to ask for any old business that we have for the board.
Yeah, last meeting we had discussed the.
Last meeting, we discussed what, sir?
I'm sorry. We discussed having staff prepare a resolution as a recommendation to planning, zoning, and also to potentially the council.
Correct.
To review standards for mobile homes and the lots that they can go on to.
Correct.
So,
Have
we
we,
talked briefly about that off the
Yeah.
record, but where are we at on with that right now?
So, with all due respect, I did not forget, but I didn't get a chance to discuss with Mrs. Velez. You know, she was not at the meeting last month.
Right.
And, you know, I will get together, and we will come up with a resolution
Okay.
and hopefully have it for you for the January meeting.
Okay.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other old business? Any new business? I would like to call attention to the fact that Helen distributed next year's schedule. I do intend to send my resume in since they're going to have to vote again. But I do want to say that I'm going to send my resume in for that. So this is either my last meeting or we'll continue. See, so whatever. But anyway, I would like to also introduce my husband at the back. Ron Thomas. We're on our way to Baton Rouge for Louisiana Public Broadcast Board meeting. So anyway, I want to thank you all for this year's work. I want to thank you for compromising and for supporting our parish. And also, sometimes things can be a little bit conflicting, but everybody, I think, respects everyone, and I certainly respect all of you. So I would like to say Merry Christmas to you, Happy New Year, and I will see you next year, if not before.
Great, thank you.
All right, and a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.